wake, and we're not retiring him permanently. And you can't hear, right, Darwin?
Yeah, now.
Now you can, okay. Just give me one little Darwin every now and then. I'll talk to the young, the older people should sit up towards the front, Darwin. This is not going to be a very serious affair, we hope, because we'd like to keep Frank around for a while, and if we humor him, maybe we'll get to keep him around for a little time on the part-time side. All of you came here tonight to kind of celebrate with Frank, and the rest of you came to eat. So, to keep part of you happy, we're going to do the eating first, and then we'll do the celebrating later on. But before that, we would like at this time to introduce our esteemed head table, who we had to con. It's amazing when you have one of these, nobody ever wants to sit at the head table. All these people were trying to hide out in the audience. But we think these are people that deserve to be up here for the most part, and some of them paid $5, so put them up here. Sitting on the, from my right, just so this way, is Lieutenant Colonel Michael Montgomery and his wife Valerie. There's no applause necessary. And next to them is Captain John Dunning and Marshall Williams. And if you don't know these next two, you shouldn't be here, I guess. That's Frank and Sherry Barr. And last is, that's my wife, Gloria. And I'm Dave Long. I volunteered for this because Captain Dunning said I did. I'm glad he showed up tonight. He can get involved in this eventually. At this time, before we leave, though, for a few moments of seriousness, I would like to ask Chaplain Ed Griffith to come up, please.
He asked me to give thanks for our meal, so if you just bow your head.
Immediately following the head table, I always like that here, the head table, they always get to go first. The rest of you, if you would, start from that side over, and it is a buffet line. Head table. Right. continue on because Frank has to get to bed early tonight. For those of you who don't know, he's been gone the last couple of weeks down to Little Rock, Arkansas, doing his second favorite job of instructing down there and telling us how hard he's had it, how many hours he's worked. And if you want to believe him, you can. Some of us have been down there and some of us know differently, but he keeps saying it's changed, so hopefully he'll recover. What we'd like to do, though, before we get into some of the presentations, there's a couple of people we're going to ask to come up here and maybe fill us in on a few of the things that a lot of us don't know about Frank over the years. Anytime you're around as many years as Frank is, you compile a few stories. Some of them you can tell in a crowd like this, some of them you probably can't. And it was hard to find some for this evening, but they're going to try and relate these, because he has had an impact on a lot of people. I was thinking on the way over from Indianapolis tonight, I didn't realize the impact that Frank had had on my life, that I guess in a way he did. Because 27 years ago, Frank is the one who enlisted me in the Indiana National Guard. Yeah. 12 years old. The scary part for those of you who have anything to do with the Guard, back then, the Guard, it was sort of a seller's market back then. You didn't have to have all the sweet talk and incentives you do now. You usually picked up the phone and we have an opening, you have 15 minutes to get out here before we make the next phone call. Well, Frank was a little bit nicer than that. He did sit down and relate all the benefits of being in the Guard, how you only had to come 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks of fun in the sun and Camp Grayling, and showed me pictures of the lake up there. It was really nice, and I got in. It sort of reminded me of Goldie Hawn, though, in that movie she did. When I came back, he forgot to tell me that we had went to something called SRF, which meant Selected Reserve Forces. We got selected to do some more in training. We were drilling every other weekend and 1 or 2 nights a week. That wasn't what I bought into, but that's what we ended up with. And my first couple of years were spent working for Frank. He was what we call one of the last hardcore admin types. Now, I realize to some of you, hardcore and admin is sort of like military intelligence. They don't necessarily go together, but it was. He was one of the old-time cross the T's and dot your I's. I spent many weekends in the back of a 2.5-ton truck typing out morning reports. This is a report we had to do every day, and it consisted of names and ranks and everything that we did. Unfortunately, it was not allowed to have one error. Telling me a report cannot have any errors is not the way to get something done. You can type the entire report out so you got to the last remark. That's when you made the mistake. Frank spent all weekend, many times, watching me type the report over, and I'm pretty sure he probably typed it over again on Monday to get it right. Things have changed a little bit since then, unfortunately. Of course, Frank's changed a little bit then. Thank you. Then that affected me greatly, I guess, being in the Guard all these years. But then the second thing that I really love him for, he came up for about 3 years later and said, they've got a new job at battalion, and I'm going to be going up there, and they're going to need a replacement for me. And after looking around at the people in the unit, I didn't see anybody else that I thought would be dumb enough to take the job. You know, would you be interested? And I was working at Donnelly's at the time here in town, working 7 days a week, and I thought, boy, this would be something nice, because I knew those guys out in the Armory didn't do anything. Put up with the guys 2 days a month, the rest of the time you didn't have to do anything. So he kind of convinced me to do that. Now, why I didn't remember about the first time he told me all the benefits of what I was doing, I don't know. But I took the job that he had, and for the next 3 to 4 years, I was known as Little Frank. I figured out what that meant. That means I was doing Frank's job, and I knew very little about it. Now Frank is moving on. Guess who's following Frank again? 24 years later, I'm moving on. I'm now... doesn't say anything about audience participation. But there again, I'm going to be doing the same thing all over again, and I'll guarantee you, after 24 years of doing one job and then switching into a job that he's done, I don't know what I'm doing all over again. It's almost like sort of some of those movies you see where the people have amnesia and then wake up and they don't have any idea what they're doing. So there again, I'm following Frank. Hopefully, I hope not going another 24 years. I'm not sure I'm ready for that. But he is going to be hard to replace. One of the things, before we move on, one little story that I always kind of like to talk about Frank now. One of Frank's little fetishes, I get fetish, that's okay to use, isn't it? Fetish. He had a little thing on his desk, a little glass container that he kept candy in. Years and years and years, that little thing was full of candy, and everybody went through there and always getting a piece of candy. Some people took more than their share over the years. Matter of fact, they, like the little kids, they come with the big hands. It sat on that desk for years, and Frank guarded that very jealously, even transported it to AT, so we'd have something up there. And at this time, I'd like somebody to stand up. Major White, would you please stand up so everybody can see you? Yeah. Well, there's a reason for it. You may sit down now. The big hand. With willful disregard and malice aforethought and all that stuff, he came in from the field one day, very dejected, as training people usually are at annual training. Nothing was going right in his day, and naturally it was everybody else's fault. But he came in and was looking forward to a piece of candy. He got a piece of candy. Guess where the jar ended up? And if I'd only had a camera to capture the expression on Frank's face that day, the only thing, the awe of Major White's rank was the only thing that kept his composure. But it was replaced, and I guess I'm going to have to get a candy dish now. Well, that's a lot. There's a lot more stories, but I'm not going to bore you. We'll let somebody else bore you. Another person that's been around him even longer and probably has a lot more tales to tell, and probably one of the older people here, aren't you, Carl? Well, except for me. They both got group breaks on the Sunshine Bus. Carl, if you'd come forward, please. Should give you more time. Oh, you can do it.
You missed the podium.
I'll tell you what.
Got a little story. Kind of interesting how Frank ended up working full-time for the Guard in Crawfordsville. But I can fill you in on that. I enlisted Frank. Back in those days, about once a month, we'd get a little list from somebody downtown. And when your name showed up on that list, we called him. So Frank's name showed up on a list. And he enlisted in the Guard. I enlisted him. I filled out all 4 enlistment records to enlist him and got the signatures, which we did part of that too at that time. Frank went to his training. Now, I don't know how it happened, but he ended up working full-time for the Illinois National Guard. And as it so happens, back then we had ASTs, Admin Supply Technicians, and the Unit Administrators. For you people who don't know what that means, that's full-time people. There's 2 of them in the Armory. One's an AST, one's an administrator. Well, one of the ASTs, late one evening, for different reasons, lost his job. The next day, now I don't know how this happened, Sherry called the Armory, wanted to know if there's an opening. That happened. That really happened. Got a hold of John Howe, Colonel Howe, he was a TPO. People know what TPOs are. At the time, he called Illinois, check Frank out, see, he's the kind of guy he wanted to work for. And he came to Crawfordsville, and he's been here ever since. Some stories. humorous and some not. As we say in the business, we survived some commanders. Some of the full-time people that we work for. And I haven't seen Frank upset a lot of times. He's pretty easy going on. But there was one time when I think he got upset a few times. Working at the armory. Now I got this off that dude, and I had them bronze. We had, it's called an armory manager now. Job. Don't ever do this, what this guy did. Of course, I'm not going to mention any names, but he came, and every once in a while, everybody would be sitting working, and Frank worked down the hallway, and if you come down the hall with the heel taps on these real shiny boots, and that really bothered Frank. So I got the boots, got them bronze. I'm going to present them to Frank tonight. See, I got them tagged. One more little story. Frank's a perfectionist. Now, this is something he don't know. But if you've ever tried to work with him, like lay out a basketball court or something, man, right to the 1/8 of an inch. There was a time that I was helping put a flue on his house in a garage where he used to live. And knowing just how everything had to be right, you don't know this, but I helped put the flue in. But Frank, that flue leans 1/8 of an inch to the north.
About the time we taxpayers send him up or with Illinois or Chicago to learn that sport that the Army was going to dominate the world with.
Team handball.
Team handball. How many people have ever heard of team handball? That shows you what a great job we did. We sent him up to Illinois for a week to learn how to play team handball, and he came back and he showed us everything he knew. As a matter of fact, we even had some equipment there for about 40 years, didn't we? And the sport is just taken off like wildfire. Another good program. At this time, we have an even more special guest who probably knows a lot more, probably. Former division commander, Major General Richard Chastain, retired, who's promised to be very serious, right? Now's the time to get all those in.
Frank and Sherry, number one, congratulations, you make it. When Carl was here, I thought about, how different the perspective is than where you sat in 1962. In 1962, and I think about the 1st of September, they made me battery commander of HHB. The commander of the battalion is here tonight, and I think a great tribute to Frank, Colonel Costamaris. The executive officer was Colonel Ed Heinbach. And they made me the battery commander in '62, and as soon as they announced that I was the battery commander, the AST quit. And all of a sudden, now just now found out how that happened, all of a sudden, that here was Bob Sharp, who was I think we called him the CAA at the time, or staff assistant, I don't really know. And Carl Todd, who surely was only a Warrant Officer 1, I don't know because it was 30 years ago. And they told me, it says, we've got this young guy that had been in the battalion a few years before and was now a very experienced AST from the Illinois National Guard on the job. Well, I opposed that. And I said, no, what I want to do is I'm going to hire a guy out of headquarters battery, 139 Field Artillery. Well, as you know, and most of you know, that was one part-timer battery commander opposing the full-time force, and I lost. Well, I would have to tell you that that was a great loss. we hired Frank Barr. And he just told me tonight, I wasn't really sure what month, whether he came late in 62 or early in 63. But almost 30 years ago, he became the ASD of Headwaters Back. And he stayed there for a number of years, and then he went to battalion. And of course, everything is a matter of personal perspective. And when I came back to the battalion as battalion XO and then battalion commander in 71, Frank was my command sergeant major. And I think really the only two arguments that we ever really had, at least as far as I was concerned, was one time when I was writing what is now, I think, referred to as the EER. That Frank was the command sergeant major of the battalion, although he was not wearing the wreath of the command sergeant major. And on that EER I wrote that I said that he is my strong right arm, and I don't think that I could exist without him as my sergeant major. And when I gave it to Frank to look over, of course he was a good type of the son of a gun, you know. And he says, command sergeant major. I said, no, Frank, you're not the command sergeant major yet. We had a long argument about that one. And the only other one that I recall was in 1974, which seems to me like yesterday. It was enough, but it has been a while. Don Cox was my XO. Frank was the command sergeant major of the battalion. We went to Fort Sill. About the second day out there, and we had a couple of problems. In fact, we had more than a couple of problems, as some of you that are here today remember. And I recall I called them into my office one day, and I said, John and Frank, I said, you're the two senior guys in this battalion. I said, you've got to de-screw this outfit. And right away they said, both of them said, it's not my fault. But we got over that, and I would have to say that after all these years, almost 30 years in this battalion, and that Frank leaves the full-time force, that the system made a mistake a few years ago when it said that the personnel officer or whoever holding that position should leave the ranks of the enlisted and become a warrant officer. I have nothing whatsoever, Carl, all the rest of you sitting around here warrant officer. Well, a little bit. But when they said to Frank Barr, who was an outstanding command sergeant major, that he had to leave the sergeant major ranks and become a warrant officer, that was a loss to the system. And I will say to Frank, to Sherry, and to the family, that I remember Frank Barr, as he retires, as being one hell of a command sergeant major. And I want to say that he is a great soldier, has a great career. And I want to thank him from the bottom of my heart that I knew people like Frank Barr as he went through the system and served his country. Congratulations on your retirement, Frank. All of my best.
What he failed to mention, that argument he said he had lost, that was the last one he ever lost since then. Merrill Zimmerman. That's you. You.
When Dave said he was going to put me after the general, I told him, don't you dare. And you see what kind of influence I had over him. All the time that I was the S1, I never could control him or Frank, either one. Came up with a lot of good ideas, but I'm here to tell you tonight that Frank Barr was the S1. He always has been. And I guess now that you're leaving, you won't be there much longer, but you'll always be the S1 in my heart. I looked this evening to see all the people that had come, and Frank says, well, gee, I didn't realize I'd influenced or brought out that much, that many people, and I told Frank, you don't know how many lives you touch. And I don't think we'll ever know how many lives you've really touched over the years you've been in the military. The family that you've raised, and all the kids. I know Frank and I spent many a time, we were the last ones out of the armory, weren't we, Frank? We were talking about family and the way life has changed. And I'll tell you, if there's one person I could emulate or would want to pattern my life after, it'd be Frank Barr. And part of the reason I think that he's gained so much respect from so many people is not because he took pride in what he was able to accomplish. He took pride in what he was able to cause others to accomplish. He took more pride in the kids, more pride in the other officers that he was able to build up all the years that he was in the military. And that's a great tribute, I think, to Frank Barr. And now I'll get on with the rest of that entertainment. Okay. Frank, as I say, I was the S1. Frank was the rear S1 for me. He stayed back in the battalion. And we were always kidding around with one another with various jokes. And I asked Dave, and Dave says that this is a perfectly all right gag gift, so we're going to give it here tonight. Right, so I was kind of worried about this because I didn't want to get out of line. But Dave did tell me to stay on the light side, and so I've got a presentation that I'd like to make tonight that I wanted to give a couple years ago and wasn't able to. And I felt like if I don't give it tonight, I'll never be able to give it. As the S1, I'd come in out of the field and every day find out how they were doing. Frank had done in the cantonment area. Never could get him to the field. Not that he wanted to or I wanted to get him out to the field, but he always had something back in the cantonment area to take care of. So I left him back there for the most part. But I came in one time and he was arguing with one of the unit admin clerks. I forget which one. Do you remember which one that was, Dave?
No, I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't even know you.
Okay, he was arguing with one of the admin clerks about there was a proper way to do things, and there's an Army way to do things. And one of the clerks had made a comment. He said there's no Army regulation that states, that he knew of, that stated how to install toilet paper. And Frank said if there isn't, there ought to be. There's a proper way to do it, and he was bound and determined to see to it that everybody learn that proper manner of installing toilet paper. So checking some of my rules, checking some manuals, I found out that the Army doesn't encourage individuals once they retire from the military to write manuals and give advice. And we decided that maybe Frank would be one of those individuals that could write a manual. And so I solicited to a friend to send me some information and some material to get Frank on his way. Now that he's going to retire, he can start writing some technical manuals and helping us out in his retirement. And I know that there's a budget cutback. Military defense spending has gotten down to the bare minimum, but this is what they sent me. And inside here is a number one military pen, guaranteed to write every time except when you're requesting some money or finances. A manual, government manual to take notes with Frank. And a holder. And they said if you're going to do it right, Frank, you're going to have to, they don't want you just to write how to install it. They wanted some other information added to it. So they've added a ruler on the end of it. You can measure how tall it should be. Or you can measure the distance. Nobody overextends the reach. And they also added a color chart here just to find out what's the most desirable color of toilet paper. I've added some blue here. Frank, you want to come up for just a second? You know one way to do it. Come on out here, Frank. Frank, show us how. I know that you know how to install that thing. Show us how and give us a training session on how to install this thing.
Anybody that's blinder than a bat without the glasses on knows that it needs to roll off the front. So when you give it this number, you get away.
seriously, Frank, if, I think, I want to tell you about Frank, I can't believe or couldn't believe the history he's got and all the information he's got in his mind. He never needs to look at half those manuals that he's got in that office. He can recite almost verbatim half of the rules and regulations, because he's been at it long enough that he knows. And if I ever needed some information, he just said it's the second book on the left on the top shelf, so he knew right where to find the information. Frank, I do hope that you'll consider that idea and write some information maybe in the future. Continue on with all the ideas. What does the two palm leaves stand for? The two palm leaves on the jacket here?
South American campaign.
Well, anyway,
South Pacific.
anyway, Frank can tell you everything, all the emblems on our crest. He can tell you every emblem and exactly what it means. There's a wealth of information and history in Frank's mind. And we're going to miss you, Frank, but good luck and congratulations on your retirement. Thank you.
After that short presentation, I understand why you two were the last two out of the Army. Jim Smith has a very heavy award.
We need to get you up front. This is participation here tonight.
Uh-oh.
Start this little story out. About 10 years ago, when I was hired on the Crawfordsville Armory, or in the 3rd Battalion, 139th Field Artillery, Sam Young took me around the armories, and he introduced me to all the people that was working there, right? And he took me into this one office, and here was this seasoned veteran. Notice I said seasoned. I thought that was a pretty good term, right? Seasoned veteran that has went through the NCO ranks and went into the command sergeant ranger ranks, and he was in a warrant rank, right? And here I was, a second lieutenant. Well, you can imagine his face when I walked in, like, oh my God, another second lieutenant to train. Well, I always remembered that face, Frank. So throughout the years, we had these post-AT parties, and we kind of gave gifts around and all this kind of stuff. Well, I kind of always let Frank not get any kind of gifts because I remembered that face on his face. So to make up for that, okay, I have a few things over here. Okay? Accumulation of them. That's right. That's right. Well, looking around the crowd here, I noticed that there's a lot of males. Okay, and the first gift that I'm going to be giving him is something that I know that everybody that is a male in the audience has experienced in the March and April time frame, and that is gas. Because over the years, Frank has always been our bean cooker, right? Always been our bean cooker. Now,
Carl started it.
Carl started it? Okay. Well, he's carried on well for you. Just me. Okay. Well, with April coming up, and you're retiring, okay, we really don't want you to feel like you're being left out, and we don't want to make you feel like you don't have any kind of responsibilities or jobs, okay? So I bought you a little thing right quick. I got you 3 bags of beans. Where you going, Frank? Where you going? We ain't done yet.
Put a hole in that bag. 30 pounds.
Yeah,
Don't put these in your...
Now, guys, are we getting back with him after he gets done with that? He'll never want beans again, right? Okay. Now, one of the things that he also likes, and you guys might not know this, but every year, I can't remember who brings it in, right? And you can help me out. The oysters?
Charlie White.
Charlie White always brings in oysters, right?
Smoked oysters.
Smoked oysters. And if you guys ever go up to the table, right, there's always a small little amount. Well, Charlie brings in tons of these oysters, but they never get past the kitchen. So for you, Frank, I bought you 2 cases, or 2 big bags of it, and some crackers for you, okay? Hey, I want to get to this man's heart, Okay. Now, some of you might know, but for several years, at the age of 16, I started smoking. Shame on me, right? For several years, I tried to quit smoking. Well, I finally came up with a grand idea. What I'll do is I'll stop buying cigarettes. Well, I don't know if you know it or not, but Frank is a very, very tight person with his money. Very tight. In fact, he is so tight that he likes smoking cigarettes, but he never buys it. He always goes and buys the cheapest things, right? Well, remember that face that I described, you know, oh my God, another second lieutenant? Well, I came in and I explained this to Frank and says, hey, Frank, I got a great idea I'm going to use. I'm not going to buy any more cigarettes. Can I bum one? Well, you know, for a guy that's so tight, this guy's bumming a cigarette from me? Well, I felt bad about that. So anyhow, Frank, I know that you can't afford it. I went and bought you a carton of cigarettes. Okay, in sale, his favorite kind. Like I say, we got a stack here of things. We're getting even here. By gosh. Another thing about Frank that's really kind of unique is if everybody in the party ever noticed during the December time frame, there's a great event of artillery. It's called Red Legs, right? And it so happened that Frank is never there. Out of the 10 years that he worked for me directly, or 5 years he worked for me directly, I was fortunate enough to get him there one time. And boy, did I catch heck for that for the next 4 years. So anyhow, now that you're retiring, okay, and you're probably getting close to, you know, not having to worry about the politics, and, you know, you can get over there and socialize, right? I want to make sure you got there. And I coordinated this with Colonel Henry and also Colonel Oceaner, okay? We gave you a coupon of 5 years here. 5 coupons to make up for the 5 I couldn't get you there. Okay. Now, behind every great man, and this is a little bit on the serious side, okay? Well, every great man, there's always a great woman. And if we don't recognize her tonight, we really be making a mistake. So, will you please come up? Good luck to you, okay?
Jim, if you could have made that presentation about a week earlier, we could have saved $12 and had to eat. Rick Quillen.
A lot of you don't know, I represent the Indiana Guard Reserve, and I'm on the Armory Board out here. And Frank and I go back a long, long ways. I've known him ever since high school, young years. I've always thought he was a wonderful gentleman. He's always been very courteous to me in the Armory, and that is the only Armory board that I have ever been on that I have felt like I was really a member of, and this makes my 4th Armory. But I feel very free with all those guys. They're very helpful. And I have a little presentation here to make to Frank tonight on behalf of the Indiana Guard Reserve. That's just a little appreciation. Thank you.
Kitty Whitlow.
Just recently, the household has gotten rid of most of their pets, and I've been trying to convince Frank that he needs a new dog. So I brought him a new pet.
What have you got in there, Kitty?
I was telling him about this little furry white dog. He says, I don't want a dog. He said it 10 times, I'm sure.
This kind of a dog I'll take.
Gosh, we've known them for well
This
over
is mine,
20 years.
Tara already took dibs on it.
These are the people who take your vacation money and then are still able to look you in the eye and call you honey. That was the last vacation we stayed home for a week, playing poker at the bar's home until your billfold is bleak. These are grand people that help you rebuild your garage roof in It only takes 3 times as long, and that many kegs went poof. I like to have Frank on my right when we play card games. This way I can call trump when he has something about the same. I like to be on his left so I can trump his ace. This way I can always keep him in his place.
She does.
We fuss and fume and fight all the time, but my husband thinks that we hate each other.
Never.
But we have a lot of fun, and we do this a lot.
I wish you had told me what you were doing, Kitty. Now I have to take my chia pet back. Deantha Wright has a special presentation.
I'm a little on the serious side, I guess. In 1989, I took my first military flight with the Indiana Army National Guard. Little did I know at that time that I was about to enlist in the National Guard in a way. I became a writer and a photographer for the 3rd Battalion. And it's something that I've been attached to these guys an awful lot. Frank has become a mentor, and he's helped me along. He's edited my work. He has, the first writing that I had presented, I was calling an M16 machine gun guys. So Frank was helpful there. They've helped educate me. As a female, I've been one of the few who's been allowed to see some of the things that go on behind the lines. One special note, for any of you who sit out in the field and think that admin's office doesn't work, you're wrong. These guys work from sun up to sundown. I was fortunate enough to travel last year to AT, to Camp Shelby with them, spend 2 weeks working beside them and writing. These guys nonstop, constantly. And Frank was there all the time, sometimes without sleep, many days worrying about people in the field, trying to get them back home for emergency situations and what have you. So Frank, come up here. Frank has always liked my photography. Well, we went one step further. And for General Chastain's retirement, we gave him an album. But this one's kind of special. We went back to the archives, which I enjoyed looking through. And I took some of the excerpts out of it, Amish John, the Commander Ford, and some of your poems that he's presented over the years to different people. We put them in a book. I have pictures of Dave Long when he had real hair and he looked like him. If you get a chance, hang me with this one. I know, paybacks are hell, right?
Yes.
Even got a picture in here of Frank and Dave working together, manually.
Manually?
Manual work. Manual work, no time for that. This is something that I took a lot of time to think about, and it wouldn't have been for the help of your fellow people there at the Armory. I would never thought about going to the archives, but Greg and some of the full-timers, Captain Dunning, which I just recently met and gotten to know, suggested we go back and drag out some of the old photos. And along with that, we've included some of the new. That one's supposed to be in there. We passed that one. But your favorite bird from AT last year, those of you who don't know, the year before last, we went to Camp Atterbury, and Frank had the delightful task of babysitting Skylar. Major Gillespie, is he here?
James talking about it.
He's the man I avoided the first year. No, Colonel Gillespie had a blue jay, and Frank was the one who got to nurse it nonstop around the clock, clean up its messes on top of his desk. And some of the things have happened. So this book kind of contains some things that Frank can sit back and reminisce on. The people, the places that have meant the most to us. And I think in the last 3.5, almost 4 years now, that I've worked with the Guard, I love these guys. I realized during Desert Storm, when we had the crisis and we shut down the Armory, we were locked out, or I was locked out basically. Outside people were screamed and what have you, the doors were locked. I realized then I had to get clearance to come in and things like that. But these guys just aren't a story. or a picture file. They're friends. They become some real special people, and Frank's been one of them. So take this, Frank, and I hope you enjoy.
Thanks a lot, Dave. I feel like it's about time I say, not only am I a client, I own part of the company. For a more special presentation right now, I'd like to introduce Colonel Ronald Henry, Commander of the Division Artillery.
Thank you very much, little Frank. You're doing a good job.
No paybacks.
Did he ever realize tonight what he's created? Just want to thank Mr. Barr for a long and distinguished career with the Indiana National Guard. Now, we're here tonight to celebrate, I hope not his full retirement, because Frank's going to be around for a few more years and on the traditional side. And we do appreciate all his long and distinguished service to the Guard. He's going to be around for a few more years, but would like to take just a minute to thank his wife Sherry and all the kids, and I wouldn't dare try to name them all, Frank. Probably botch that up. But I do appreciate the wife and the kids' support, because we all understand without a great wife and a great family, it makes our job very difficult. And I'm sure that over the many, many years, the family has had to put up with Frank being gone on weekends and these kind of things, and we certainly appreciate that, sure, appreciate that. But I do have one small token of our appreciation, and my XO said it was under the podium here, so we'll look and see if he's right. He's always right. We have a little plaque for you, Frank, that says, for your dedication, support, and leadership for 33 years of service to the 38th Infantry Division Artillery. Frank? Appreciate it.
Our next presenter is Frank's ex-full-time supervisor for a not very long period of time. I don't know, is that the reason you left, Frank?
No.
Okay. Captain John Dunning.
I was wondering the same thing, Dave. This is twice I've been assigned to battalions as a personnel officer, and both times, I guess my right-hand man has retired out on me. Mr. Chamberlain down in Evansville, now Frank here. Frank, when I was up here before, and then for the short time now, you've taught me a lot. I appreciate it. Little Frank and I both are happy you're staying around, at least on the traditional side. We're both going to desperately need your help. We took up a small collection from the full-time unit support personnel throughout the battalion, and we knew you'd probably getting plaques and all that kind of good stuff. We also know how much you like to go out and work in your shop, and so to help you further increase your tool inventory out there, or however you want to see fit to use this, we'd like to present you with these gift certificates from Sears, and sure this will help you to keep them out of the house. Thanks, Frank. Appreciate it.
And next we have Colonel Michael Montgomery, Commander of the 3rd Battalion, 139th Field Artillery.
I have a special honor tonight bestowed upon me that none of the rest of these past 3rd Battalion commanders can lay claim to. I'm the commander that outlasted Frank. feel a little bit like an outsider to this battalion, since I didn't enlist in the 3rd Battalion, and